Hey guys, I'm John Setzler. Welcome back to the Kamado Joe cooking channel. Today we're going to continue on our Back to Basics series, and I'm going to show you everything you need to know about how to cook pork spare ribs. So let's get started. Okay, to get started on our ribs cook, I'm going to fire up the Big Joe. I've got one Kamado Joe fire starter cube down here in a hole in the middle of my charcoal, so I'm going to light that up and we're going to let this burn here with the lid open for about 10 minutes. After we get our fire going, I'm going to place about 4 chunks of the Kamado Joe cherry around this fire to get us a little smoke going for this cook. And then we're going to place both halves of the heat deflector on the bottom level of the divide and conquer flexible cooking system. And then we'll place each half of the grill grates on the top. And today we're going to set up to cook around 250 degrees. In order to set up for some low and slow cooking at about 250, I'm going to open my bottom vent to about 1 inch. And I'm going to close the slider all the way on the top vent, and I'm going to close the daisy wheel to about halfway, and we're going to let the temperature slowly come up to around 250 degrees. If I need to increase the temperature, I'm going to open this vent, or if I need to decrease it, I'm going to close it down. So we'll just let it come up slowly from here. The star of our show today is this rack. This is a full rack of pork spare ribs. I've got 2 of these. We're going to cook 2 today, but the first thing I want to show you is what to look for when you get a rack of ribs. You want that rack of ribs to bend like this. You want it to be fairly flexible when you pick it up. If that rack is stiff, you're going to want to avoid it. You can take these come wrapped in the cryovac packaging, and you can pick the packaging up, and usually if there's more than 1 rack in there, it's going to be a little stiffer than that, but you can tell that that rack's going to bend. You want it to be flexible, and when you open the package, it should not have any odor. If it has any kind of bad odor when you open the package, you take those back and exchange them for some that don't. I've come across some occasional ones that smell bad, so you're going to want to avoid that. So the next thing we need to do is prep this rack of ribs, and I want to show you the first thing we do. On the back side, on the bone side, you'll see this flap that we want to cut off. You just want to take a sharp knife and cut that guy all the way off. Do not throw this meat away. You can actually throw this on the grill while you cook the ribs, or you can save it and use it as ground pork. The next thing we want to have a look at on this rack of ribs is what's called the silver skin. It's a thin membrane that covers the back side of the bone here on these ribs. You've got 2 options with this. You can leave this on if you like, but the die-hard barbecue enthusiasts are going to recommend that you take this off, which you can do. What you're going to want to do is take that sharp knife and get it slipped up under that silver skin and get it started from one end. Just get it where you can start pulling it up. Every now and then you'll get lucky and this will come off very easily, but what you have to do is just get under the edge of it, and then you're going to grab it with a paper towel. You're going to get a firm grip on it with that paper towel and hold the bone, and you're just going to peel this off. Mine's not going to come off in one piece, so I'm going to have to do it in 2 pieces, but most of it's coming off here, and usually it comes off fairly easily. So I'll go back and get that last piece, and we're going to have just a small little bit left over there that I'm going to get loose. And then we're ready to flip this back over. We're going to trim off what is called the rib tips. We're going to do what's called a St. Louis style cut here. And if you look at the grain on this side of ribs, you're going to see this line running right down through here. And we're going to cut that off. I'm going to start at the thin end, and we're just going to run our knife right down that length and cut that all the way through just like that. This is another piece of meat that you don't want to throw away. What I like to do is I like to throw this on the grill while I'm cooking my ribs, but once again, you can put this with that skirt that we cut off and you can turn this into ground pork, but it's really good meat. And today I'm going to throw this one on the grill, and I'll show you what we'll do with that. But the next thing we need to do is clean up the end and get a nice squared off cut here. So we're going to come right along here by this last rib bone and trim that guy off square at the end. And now what we have is a nice square or rectangular rib cut. This is called the St. Louis style cut, and this is how I prefer to prepare my ribs. It makes them look nicer, and it's just a presentation. Like I said, you don't have to do any of this trimming. You can leave all that meat on there and throw that whole rack of ribs on the grill just like that. So pick your method, and I'm going to get the second rack prepared just like this, and we'll be right back. The next step in this process is to add rub to your ribs. You're going to add your favorite barbecue rub, and you're just going to take a liberal coat. And what I like to do is put enough rub on there where it completely covers the meat, where you can't see the meat grain through the rub. So we're going to coat the back side. I've got the bone side up on these. We're going to coat it first. And then I'm just going to pat that on. As you notice, I'm not using any binder. No mustard, no oil. We'll let this adhere naturally, and I'm going to let that sit there for about 10 minutes before I flip these over to do the other side. Okay, after your ribs have been sitting there for a few minutes, you'll see how they get a wet look, and that rub's going to adhere just fine to that. So you just flip these guys over, and then we're going to coat the top side, the meat side, the same way we did before. And we're going to let those sit there just like that until our grill comes up to temperature. Alright guys, Big Joe is up to temp. We're cruising along right between 225 and 250. So look at that smoke. I'm going to open the grill up. We're going to lay these beautiful racks of ribs right on the Joe. One right there. Another one right beside it. I'm going to leave just a little air gap between the two, and then I'm going to take that one of those rib tip pieces that we cut off, and I'm going to lay it right up here on the front side of the grill. We're going to let that cook along with these. This will get ready before the ribs will, and it's what we like to call Pitmaster's treat. So we'll be back to have a look at that. We're going to close this grill up, and we're going to let these go for about 2 hours before we even open the grill again. So I'll see you then. We've been going for right at about 2 hours now here, so I'm going to pop the lid open. We're going to have a look. These are coming along nicely. I can see some areas here where the meat's starting to pull back from the bone a little bit, which is a sign that our cook's going well. The ribs are still nice and damp across the top, so we're going to let these go a little bit longer. I'm seeing it starting to dry out a little bit here, which means that our bark is starting to form. So I'm going to let this go for about another 30 minutes with the lid closed, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what we're going to do next. Alright, we've been going 2 hours and 45 minutes or so now, and that's a good indication there of how well this grill holds moisture. When I open the dome lid, my lens fogs up, my glasses fog up, and everything else. So as you can see here, the top of my ribs are starting to dry out just a little bit, and that's indicating that our bark is forming. So that's a good thing. That's exactly what we want it to do. So what I'm going to do now is just spritz the top of these with apple juice. You can spritz with water, you can spritz with beer, just any kind of liquid you like. Just keep them nice and damp, and do that once every 20 minutes or so for the next hour. So I'm going to close this back up, and I'm going to hit it again in 20 minutes, hit it again 20 minutes later, and at the hour mark I'm going to hit it again, and that's when we'll come back to have a look. Alrighty, we're about 3.5 hours into this cook, and these ribs are looking phenomenal. I've been spritzing these, like I said, on 20-minute intervals for the last hour, and I think that's about all the spritzing I'm gonna do. You can see here how the meat's pulling back from the bones even further. I've actually already cut into my rib tips and been tasting them. They need to go just a little bit longer. So like I said, we're 3.5 hours in. I'm probably going to close the lid and let these go for another 45 minutes to an hour before I come back, and we're going to mix up a little barbecue sauce glaze to baste the top of these with after they've cooked for about another hour. So what I was talking about earlier with the bend test is to tell when your ribs are ready. You should be able to pick them up with a tong in the middle, and they should bend over almost double. And these are not quite there yet. I don't know how you can see that's bending, but it's not bending over double enough yet. So it's not, these aren't as tender as they're going to get. So we're going to let those keep cooking, and we'll be back in about another hour to look at these and go to the next step. Okay, we've been going for about 5 hours here. Just about, and these ribs are getting closer to being ready. We're going to pick these up and do the bend test again like I showed you before, and see those are bending over nicely now. They're getting close. They're not quite there yet. We're going to let them go a little longer, but during this last hour or so of this cook, I'm going to baste these with some barbecue sauce. And what I've done, I have thinned the barbecue sauce out with some apple sauce. Some apple juice. You can do any kind of little glaze you like. You can use straight barbecue sauce, or you can just not sauce them if you like. This is totally preference. I've just mixed up a little barbecue sauce with a little apple juice to make a thinner glaze, and I'm going to glaze the top of these, and we'll let these finish cooking for, I'm thinking maybe another 45 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe less. We're going to come back and check on them in about 30 minutes. Okay, these ribs are ready. We've been going 5.5 hours, and I'm ready to call this bend test good to go. We picked these up by the middle, and they bend over almost double. It's kind of hard to see there, but there's a nice flex. They bend over without breaking apart. Now, if your ribs cook far enough to where they do break apart or they start to tear when you do that, that's okay. They're just going to be super tender. They're going to be more tender than the competition style competition style ribs, which is kind of what we're doing here. The other thing you can do to test these for doneness is use a toothpick. You insert the toothpick into the meat, and it should slide right in there like with very little to no resistance. It's like a Boston butt when it's ready. It's called the probe test, and these ribs are just super tender all the way down. These just go in with no resistance whatsoever. So we're going to take these off the grill, take them inside, and cut into them and have a taste. Okay, I've got these off, and I'm going to cut a few of these ribs, and we're going to have a look. Man, they smell fantastic. And let's have a glance at one of these. Look at that. That looks gorgeous. Let's pull one of these off here and have a taste. Okay, we're going to check this out. We're going to have a big bite of this. So, man, that's delicious. Beautiful, tender. Now I want to show you what proper bite through texture on a competition style rib should look like. Let's have a closer look at this after I've taken a bite from it. One of the things you look for in a properly cooked rib is the ability to take a bite out of it like that, and the meat pulls away cleanly from the bone, but it doesn't pull away from the bone anywhere other than where you've bit it. That in competition circles is how you determine whether the rib or how well the rib is cooked. If the meat tears off of here completely, what you end up with is a very beautifully tender rib, and people call that fall off the bone. And there's nothing wrong with fall off the bone ribs when you're serving that to your friends and family. It's very good. You can't go wrong with it. But I know the people that watch these videos and the people that follow, they're looking for competition standards a lot of times, and these ribs come very close to meeting the competition standard when it comes to bite through texture, which is what I've gone for here. I could have let these ribs cook for another 30 minutes or so, and we would have had fall off the bone consistency on those. So what we have here is a good walkthrough on how to cook ribs. I'm not focusing here on ingredients, recipes or anything, but hopefully this video will give you the information and knowledge you need on how to cook ribs, how to prepare your ribs, and most importantly, how to know when these ribs are ready to come off the grill. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Kamado Joe. Follow us on Twitter @Kamado Joe. And until next time, this is John Setzler with Kamado Joe Cooking Channel.